Siva Torah. This is the introduction of the Chofetz Chaim to the third volume, The Laws of Shabbos. Zoches Yom Shabbos Lakacho, Sheshem Tavod. The Torah tells us you should remember Shabbos and sanctify it. You're permitted to work for 6 days, meaning do creative activities for 6 days. God had created heaven and earth over a 6-day period. The Chofetz Chaim is explaining, the Torah is informing us that observing the Shabbos is the root, the basis for a Jew's belief, Leida Shalom Humachudosh, that the world is something which was created. It's not something which was always here, but rather God brought it into existence. The Kem Shebora Kol, and since God created all that does exist, Hu Adon Alakol, He's therefore the master over everything. Vanachna Avodov, and so if God is the master, because everything that exists He created, including the human being. Therefore, Hu Adon Alakol, He's the master. Vanachna Avodov, and we are His subjects. Therefore, we're obligated to adhere to His will and to serve Him with our bodies, with our souls, and with all our possessions. Because factually it's all His. This is very important. The forewarning or the value of Shabbos is mentioned 12 times in the Torah. 12 times. And Chazal tell us that one who observes the Shabbos kilum kad kol Torah, it's as if you're observing the whole Torah its entirety. And one who violates the Shabbos is as if you're actually rejecting the Torah its entirety. And it's for this reason, to Shorsh Emunah, because this is the fundamental, this is the basis for one's belief. He is the all encompassing of everything. So if you observe the Shabbos, you acknowledge He is the master, He's the creator, and everything that exists, it exists only because He created. So you accept His dominion, you accept His mastership. But if you don't observe the Shabbos, that means it's irrelevant to you. Irrelevant, or it doesn't play any role in your life. So if it doesn't play any role in your life, that means you're actually the master, or you're not adhering to responsibility of subject to master. That's what it is. Shabbos. So you'd say, you ask a question, a person, the Gemara Chulin discusses the two types of apostates. There's a muma l'te'ovon, and there's a muma l'hachis. A muma l'te'ovon means, I believe in the mitzvah, I believe in God, but I am the priority. I'm not violating defiantly. I like this particular type of cuisine. It doesn't conform with the Torah. But you know something? My desires take priority over the Torah. So there, he's not violent. That's not called defiance. It's his desires dictate his life. Then you have a defiant Jew. What's defiance? The person is able to buy kosher meat, and he has available non-kosher meat. The cost of the non-kosher is no less than the kosher meat. The quality of the non-kosher meat is no better quality than the kosher meat, and he chooses the non-kosher over the kosher. So factually, if we're speaking, he knows that he's obligated to eat kosher. Why choosing to eat not kosher if everything's equal? The answer is that's called defiance, because God is not going to dictate my life. Out of spite, I will not do the will of God. A defiant Jew, that person is considered, he's persona non grata in God's eyes. However, when it comes to Shabbos, even if you violate the Shabbos, not because you're defiant, only because it's a convenience not to observe the Shabbos, because it's too restrictive, then you're considered an apostate, as if you rejected the whole Torah. Because since this is the fundamental of belief, accepting God, this is something which is totally unacceptable. I'll give you an example. A person works for a company. His salary, everything's the company. And then he does his own thing, and it's irrelevant what the contract states, what he's obligated to do, turns his back on the company. Because he's doing his, he's cut himself off. You have no relevance to the company. Observing Shabbos is acknowledging God as the master. Person says, you know something, doesn't fit into my purview of life. Because if you're the master, that means I can't do what I want. I reject you as my master. That means you've cut yourself off from God. That's why Shabbos is such a fundamental, even though you may be doing it not out of defiance, out of just convenience, or you're the priority, that's enough to actually to disenfranchise you from God. The Chofetz Chaim writes in one of his Sfarim that he explains that he says the person is a doctor and he has a shingle up outside and he says on vacation for 2 weeks. So people know he's coming back in 2 weeks. So because they know the doctor is still present in that location. What happens if the doctor takes down the shingle? That means the doctor is not coming back. If you, as a Jew, have your shingle up, I observe Shabbos. That means God is part of your life. The moment you observe Shabbos, that means God's not part of your life. If God's not part of your life, you have no relationship with him. Therefore, a person who's a mumar is an apostate, even if he's not doing it out of defiance, he's actually severed his relation with God. Therefore, he's considered a mumar chala Torah kula for that reason. Rashi says the person does not observe Shabbos, he's denying Masa Bereshis. He's denying that God is the creator. The word denying doesn't mean, denying means that if you live your life as if God is not the creator, then God has no relevance to your life. Years ago, I used to say to people, the person says, I believe in God. It has great value, but I'm not bound by the Torah. So I asked the person, so what does God want from you? God wants I should be a good person. And what is the meaning of a good person? Not to hurt a fellow human being, to be honest, to be a person of integrity. So I asked the person, I said, if you would not believe in God, and these are the morals and ethics of society, would you steal? Would you hurt your fellow human being? Would you be a person of integrity? You'd be the same person of integrity. So tell me exactly, how does God play a role in your life? What's the effect of God in your life? You believe in God, but he has no realm. If you observe the laws of the Torah, and if not for the Torah, you would not observe those laws. So you're observing those laws because you believe in God. Then God has tremendous input. And what about if you don't believe in the Torah? God, what is right? Right is what you believe to be right. And what's wrong? What you believe to be wrong. It's like we used to say, what's a fanatic? Anybody to the right of me is a fanatic. And anybody to the left of me is what? Is a heretic. And where do I stand? I stand in the middle. So who determines what is what and what is not? The person. So it comes out, what happens is, believing in God is really a figment of a person's imagination that it only soothes his conscience. I believe in God. But outside of that, what's God's input in my life? No input in my life. Maybe in this situation, the input would be, if it would be purely societal values, a person believes he could get away with something. Let's say God forbid take another. But if you believe in God, to do something so extremely wrong, that he's not going to do, because he knows God's going to come and take his, and there'll be a day of reckoning for doing that. Societal, there's no day of reckoning. Believing in God, so therefore, at that level, God has relevance to the person's life. But again, it's Shorish Emunah, is the root, it's the foundation of one's belief in God, is based on the Shabbos itself. There's a semblance of this concept mentioned in the Midrash. We find in the Torah, in the prophets, in the scripture, Sheshkula Shabbos Keneged Kol HaMitzvos, that Shabbos is the equivalent of the whole Torah's entirety. But Torah Menayin, where do we find the Torah it's alluded to? Moshe Loma LeMitzvah Shabbos. Because Moshe delayed. He did not tell the mitzvah Shabbos. This is the story where they went out to collect the man on Shabbos. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Arono me'antem lishma mitzvos torosai. To what point do you refuse to keep my mitzvos? Over there we're talking about they went to violate the Shabbos. And God says, to what point do you refuse to keep all my mitzvos? It was only the Shabbos. If you would have taught them in advance and communicated, it wouldn't have happened. It says the Jews, they defied God in the desert. They did not walk in my statutes. So what is the meaning? They did not walk in my statutes. They violated, they desecrated the Shabbos. God on Sinai descended, he spoke to them. You informed them your holy Shabbos. If you're meritorious and you keep the Shabbos, then I value it as if you kept the Torah in its entirety. And if you desecrate the Shabbos, I consider as if you violated all the mitzvos. We say this we read on a fast day, the Torah. Shomer Shabbos, one who observes the Shabbos, not to desecrate it. And the person who withdraws his hand to do an evil, God values it as if he keeps the Torah in its entirety. So here we have three allusions, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, that observing the Shabbos is the equivalent of observing the whole Torah entirety, and otherwise not. It's very interesting. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that a non-Jew who observes the Shabbos is chayiv misa. Akum sheshabbos chayiv misa. A non-Jew is not permitted to observe the Shabbos. The question: why is this such an extreme level of reaction by God? No, there's a famous question the Ran that asks, Rabbeinu Nissim says, Avram Avinu, before the Torah was given, he kept the Torah in its entirety. But what was Avram's status before Sinai? He was a Noahide. So if he was a Noahide, how did he observe the Shabbos? That's the question the Ran asks. So the Ran explains, the halacha is, if a person wears tzitzis on Shabbos, and the tzitzis are not valid, okay, are you considered carrying? It's considered carrying. The only reason why tzitzis are not considered transporting is because tzitzis ornament the garment. Because you fill the mitzvah of tzitzis. But if you have tzitzis that are posel, that are not valid, so the tzitzis hanging on the corners are totally superfluous. It's not ornamenting the garment. Therefore, it's considered transporting. So the Ran says, Avram Avinu wore tzitzis. Why? He observed the Torah. So if you see him as a Jew, so it's an enhancement, he's ornamenting the garment. And if he's not a Jew, he's considered transporting. So by wearing tzitzis, he did not fully observe the Torah, so he's connected to the mitzvah. But because if you're not obligated, it's not an ornament. Therefore, as a result of that, it's considered he transported from domain to domain. That's the Ran's answer. How Avram Avinu was able to circumvent this issue and to be there, although he was not there, because otherwise there'd be a catch-22, as we're talking here. But again, why? If we're saying observing the Shabbos is considered keeping the Torah in its entirety. The Gemara says in Chagiga that you're not permitted to teach Torah to a non-Jew. Why? Because the pasuk says, Torah tzivah to Moshe, Moroshe kilas Yaakov. The Torah was commanded to Moshe. It's the heritage of the Jewish people, of the congregation of Yaakov. The shin and the sin, what determines the pronunciation? Where you put the dot, on the right side or the left side. If it's pronounced Morosha, Morosha means heritage. Morosa means Erisin. The Torah is the betrothed of Yaakov. If a man is betrothed to a woman, or a woman's betrothed to a man, and somebody else has relations with that woman, it's adultery. Because the Torah is considered the betrothed of the Jewish people, the Torah is not permitted to the non-Jew for that reason. That's the reason why it has such a consequence. It's considered such an extreme violation. So now, if observing the Shabbos is the equivalent of keeping the Torah's entirety, you're going in an area where you don't belong, because that is its status. Because the fact is, the relationship at Sinai that came about because we accepted the Torah and the Shabbos was given to us, that means that we are the exclusive of God. We are God's exclusive people. Somebody else observing the Shabbos says, I'm part of the crowd. You're not part of the crowd. You present yourself as a prince, well, you're a commoner. Person goes into the palace in the location where only the prince is permitted to go. What does he deserve? He deserves to be put to death. Therefore, as a result of that, only the Jew observes the Shabbos. The non-Jew is not permitted to observe the Shabbos. So the whole idea, we speak about the 7-day Adventists. They observe the Shabbos. They keep Saturday, even though their observing of the 7th day doesn't meet halachic criteria. So there's a whole discussion in the Gemara. Does it mean to say if they designate Shabbos as their day of rest, it's a problem, because they want to take that day, which that day is not that day. Somebody once made a remark, I think it was Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, that every other religion, other than Jewish religion, the day of rest is not Saturday. The Muslims, it's Friday. The Christians, it's Sunday. The only one who's their day of rest to commemorate creation is only the Jews on Saturday, which actually is the day. God created the world in 6 days. The 7th day, which what they call Saturday, that is the day God refrained from creation. But they commemorate that on the 6th day or on Sunday. Why not on Shabbos? Because we say every Shabbos that Shabbos was given as a gift to us, and a non-Jew doesn't observe the Shabbos, even though they try to observe it, and it's part of their their profile, but the profile is not on the right day. It's either Friday or it's on Saturday. Moshe Feinstein, Zechron Livrocha, I once heard him say this directly from him. I didn't read it, that he said, it's interesting. Every society in the world has a day of rest. I'm not sure about the Orientals, but every society has a day of rest. They work 6 days. The 7th day is the day of rest. Whether it's called, many years ago, I received an almanac in the mail, didn't order it. And it says on the year, whatever the year was, 1982, 81, it says the year of the Lord. That's what it was referred to. The year of the Lord. That's what was printed in the almanac. Sunday was also somehow it referred to the day of the Lord. Sunday is the day of the Lord. That's the way the Christians refer to Sunday. And that's the reason why in certain states, in the United States, you had blue laws. Blue laws, they weren't permitted to have the businesses open because it was the time they would go to church. That was their day. But it's not Saturday. So Hashem, although you try to mimic and imitate the Jews, it's not going to be Saturday. It's either Friday or it's going to be Sunday. If you ever take a look at the vestments of the Pope, they resemble the vestments of the Kohen Gadol. That because they believe that we were disenfranchised when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and now they are the chosen, but only if you believe what they believe in their Messiah and their whatever they believe in, and therefore, so who's the head of the church, which is the equivalent of what they consider the holy city. It's the Pope, and he wears vestments. He wears vestments which have a semblance of the vestments of the Kohen Gadol. I'm not sure how many vestments he wears, but he wears vestments because, again, it's a statement. And the reason why the Vatican never recognized the state of Israel is for that same reason, because their belief is that until the coming of Mashiach, which they believe is their Messiah, the Jews can never have the land of Israel, can never go back there. Therefore, under no circumstance will they ever recognize the state of Israel. The Pope, until one Pope, I think was Benedict, no Pope actually stepped onto Israel proper. I remember there was a Pope, I think Pope Paul, he went into the Jordan, but he would never cross into Israel proper, because stepping on Israel proper will be an acknowledgement that the state of Israel is rightfully the Jews. That will be a refutation on the dogma of Christianity. So therefore he will not accept it, because it totally refutes and states what their position is false. But Hashem says, Shabbos is for my children. It was given to the Jewish people. The Torah is only the Jews. You observe it, you have Sunday, you have Friday, but Saturday you don't have. Okay, we're going to stop here.
I have a question.